So,
magnitude earthquake that hit Colombia on Monday.
Okay, so as you all know, that Colombia got hit by a 7.4 earthquake, and that was pretty brutal. So I just saw some of the video, and I'm going to do a little podcast on it on my social media as well, going live on my TikTok. So it's pretty brutal, and apparently over 100 people perished. So let's hear what they have to say.
Okay. The horrific 7.4 magnitude earthquake that hit Colombia on Monday. This video is from an airport in Pereira. A large part of that airport was destroyed. Welcome back to CBS News Detroit at 5. I'm Shayna Humphreys.
And I'm Terrence Friday. The death toll in Western Colombia has now risen to more than 200 people today. Wow. Rescue crews are scrambling to save people who are trapped under the rubble. Maribel Gonzalez has more.
More than 24 hours after a 7.4 magnitude earthquake rocked Western Colombia.
7.4.
Rescue workers are racing against the clock to find survivors buried underneath rubble and debris. At least 1,500 homes have been damaged or destroyed, and Colombia's Geological Service has recorded more than 70 aftershocks across the country since Monday's earthquake.
I am from California, so I grew up with earthquakes. I'm very familiar with them.
Mark Erickson says he experienced the violent shaking of California's Northridge earthquake back in 1994. But yesterday's earthquake in Colombia felt different to him.
This was in another category. I've never felt anything like this. It was scary. It started like any normal earthquake would, with some gentle rumbling, and then the strange thing about this, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it just kept going and going and going.
Supplies are being collected and help mobilized from organizations across the world, including the Global Empowerment Mission in Florida.
We need hands, we need volunteers in order for Colombia to move forward.
As recovery efforts continue, the United Nations is warning that food distribution will be crucial in the coming days, with the number of missing people forecast to rise.
They need tents and canned foods and a lot of water and electrolytes in order for them to survive.
I'm Maribel Gonzalez reporting.
Yeah, so that's pretty brutal by watching the earthquake. So that was probably one of the biggest earthquakes at that side of town. Anyway, I think it happened like 10 years ago, but the earthquake that was pretty big as well in California back in 1983, 84, I believe. 7.5, so, and as well as in Haiti. So the earthquake was pretty fierce and pretty brutal, so we'll check out some more footage of the earthquake, but yeah, it doesn't look too good, man. It looks like a lot of people are pretty much passed away here.
New footage shows how devastating the 7.4 magnitude earthquake was. Colombians know it was the strongest quake to hit their country this century. What they don't know is how many people are buried beneath the rubble. This Red Cross worker says they've rescued 3 people from inside the wreckage of this building, who told them others are still inside. Here, rescuers cheer when they discover survivors. A day earlier, this man says he and his daughter escaped the now destroyed building, but his wife did not.
I just hear like some shaking, and I hear my mom screaming like, oh, there's an earthquake.
Silvana Botero and her son Juan Pablo are visiting from Chicago.
I'm still scared because, you don't know what's going to happen. And all I keep thinking is like, okay, if this happens again, what will be like our plan? Because if something happens, like there's not much that you can do. Like you feel hopeless.
Caring for the many injured is also a problem. The United Nations reports the quake damaged 5,000 buildings, including main hospitals.
And more than 550 educational institutions, 24 health facilities, and more than 350 community centers have affected.
After a large earthquake, we can expect thousands of aftershocks. Many of these will be unfelt.
The seismologist explains the earthquake happened unusually deep, about 100 kilometers down.
What we have learned from around the world, these deep earthquakes, when they occur about 100 or more kilometers depth, they actually tend to produce fewer aftershocks than a a shallow coastal earthquake.
That is welcome news to those praying their loved ones are alive. Jose Fernando Usma says rescuers have about 24 hours to reach anyone trapped in air pockets and get them out alive. Nathaniel Dove, Global News.
Yeah, so man, it's definitely not good to. But we'll let's
June 24th. Oh, that was devastating. 7.2, Malaysia.
watch
And it
Jesse
all
Weber.
looks alarming, but it does it mean that major earthquakes are actually increasing? We're going to talk about this, but it seems the short answer from this would be no, at least not based on the long-term data. The USGS says we expect about 16 major earthquakes worldwide.
Okay, the 2026 most powerful earthquakes: the Philippines, June 7th; Venezuela, June 24th; Tonga, March 24th; Colombia, August 10th; Indonesia. So
Cluster, another
that's quite a bit.
time without being abnormal. And there's another reason it makes
Usually in the third world
earthquakes
countries,
happen more
it's
often, because scientists have more instruments to detect earthquakes.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are much faster at seeing the damage. You know, with smartphones, social media, we can watch a building collapse on the other side of the world within minutes. That's a new form of information. So let me ask you, is the world actually becoming more dangerous, or does it just feel that way because phones and social media now put every disaster everywhere, right in front of us in real time? And when you look at that list again, many of those places, they sit
All right, so
along or near the vast seismic zone around the Pacific Ocean. It's known as the Ring of Fire. The USGS calls the Ring of Fire the most seismically and volcanically active zone in the world. It's where the Pacific plate meets a number of surrounding tectonic plates. Venezuela is different, though. Its June earthquakes occur near the boundary between the Caribbean and South American plates, not the Pacific Ring of Fire. That helps explain why so many earthquakes happen in the same broad part of the world. But it doesn't prove that one caused the next. So, again, are these earthquakes connected in any way? To help us answer this, and again, we're going to have this great mind on, throw your questions, your thoughts in. So let me bring in somebody who can make sense of everything that's happening beneath their feet, including why earthquakes remain so difficult to predict. You know, how do we prepare for the big one? What is the big one? Dr. Judith Hubbard is an earthquake scientist and visiting assistant professor in Cornell University's Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. She is also the co-founder of Earthquake Insights, a publication that helps explain major earthquakes, the science behind them. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start with the question that everybody watching is probably.
yeah, I'm going to shut this off. Tap to exit.
7 earthquakes this year. Is this unusual? Yeah. Is it actually unusual? Does it feel unusual in any way? Talk to us about this.
Well, you're right. There's about 15, 16 magnitude 7 plus earthquakes every year in any average year. The question is, are they earthquakes that people pay attention to? Are they earthquakes that cause damage? In this case, we've seen a couple very damaging earthquakes in South America just in the last couple of months, and so it feels very relevant and very dangerous, but it's actually totally within the range of normal.
So in other words, I don't know, every year we're seeing something like this?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at 2023, we had the earthquakes in Turkey that killed tens of thousands of people, right? We go back to 2008, there was the Sichuan earthquake, which killed about 80,000 people in central China. Large earthquakes are something that people usually don't think about.
What about Haiti?
They usually aren't affected by them, but now you see this news and it's just full of videos and stories.
Sure, but I guess the frequency of the earthquakes. Obviously, we have a large earthquakes. They happen they happen in history, but the frequency in so many different countries, is that unusual? And are they in any way connected? Does one earthquake affect another earthquake?
So the frequency is normal. It is true that sometimes earthquakes can trigger other earthquakes. In fact, everybody's used to the concept of aftershocks. Right? After a big earthquake, you'll have many smaller earthquakes. Sometimes you'll trigger a larger earthquake. There are situations where one large earthquake can trigger another large earthquake, maybe on a neighboring section of fault, or sometimes
Alright, so I'm gonna go and check out some more other footage, and we'll see what's going on with the earthquake right now. So I'll head out to Fox News.
Good evening, I'm Jillian Turner. This is your Fox News report. A Marine veteran is freed from a Russian prison. Robert Gilman is on his way home now after more than 4 years in custody. He was reportedly in a, quote, catatonic state before being released on humanitarian grounds. Gilman was arrested for alleged...
Alright, so we'll skip that one, and then we'll go to that. Check out this. This scene is brutal. Look at that. Holy mackerel, look at that. That's brutal. Wow.
On August 10th, 2026, a powerful magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck western Colombia, producing intense ground movement across a vast area and causing serious structural damage in communities across the region.
Wow. Look at that. That is brutal. Wow.
The earthquake was centered near San Jose del Palmar in Chocó, approximately 5 kilometers from the town, and occurred at a depth of around 107 kilometers. Despite the relatively deep origin of the earthquake, the enormous amount of energy released sent strong shaking across western and central Colombia, with residents in Cali, Pereira, Manizales, Medellin, and Bogotá reporting that buildings and other structures were violently shaken.
Wow, even the churches are coming down too. This is brutal. Fuck, it looks like a movie, man. Wow. Man, it's horrible.
The structural impact became increasingly clear as emergency teams moved through affected communities following the main shock. More than 1,600 buildings were reported damaged across the affected areas, while 61 structures were reported to have completely collapsed.
Jesus. Wow.
The damage was not limited to isolated cracks or cosmetic problems. In the hardest hit locations, sections of buildings gave way, walls and facades were destroyed, and piles of concrete and other construction debris were left across the sites of collapsed structures.
Well, there goes that house.
The scale of the damage meant that engineers and emergency personnel had to examine buildings individually to determine whether they remained structurally sound or posed a danger of further collapse. Cali emerged as one of the areas where the physical impact of the earthquake was particularly visible. Local officials reported that around 20 buildings had crumbled, while approximately 380 additional structures were damaged. Images and video from the city showed rescue workers and civilians working around collapsed buildings, with large pieces of concrete and rubble being removed from damaged structures.
Como quedó la torre 6 del portal del parque, destruida completamente.
The force of the shaking also sent clouds of dust into the air as buildings failed, creating scenes of confusion in neighborhoods where residents had only moments earlier been carrying out their normal morning routines. The damage to buildings in Cali extended beyond complete collapses. Other structures were left with visible cracks, damaged walls, broken sections of facades, and other signs of severe structural stress.
It's brutal, man.
Homes, commercial establishments, and other buildings were among those affected, prompting authorities to begin inspections across neighborhoods where residents feared that apparently standing structures might have suffered hidden internal damage. In a major earthquake, the most dangerous buildings are not necessarily those that have already fallen. Structures that remain standing can also contain weakened columns, walls, joints, or foundations that may fail during a later aftershock. In Pereira and other parts of the western region, emergency crews similarly encountered damaged buildings and infrastructure as they assessed the earthquake's reach. The violent movement of the ground placed enormous stress on masonry walls, concrete structures, roofs, windows, and building connections, while older or less resistant structures were particularly vulnerable. In some locations, damage was concentrated around individual portions of buildings, leaving sections standing beside collapsed areas and creating unstable piles of debris that had to be approached carefully by rescue personnel.
Man, so, I don't know, I think being outside would be a lot better than being inside because you don't want to have falling debris landing on your head and end up killing you, but it's good that you stay outside, but watching it live shake like that is terrifying, man. Just seeing buildings shake and cars, trucks move and things falling down. It's just unbelievable how a structure that big can move and the whole building could just topple down because an earthquake. But an earthquake is, you know, it's fierce. So,
where buildings were considered unsafe,
wow.
People were moved outside while structural assessments were carried out.
Unbelievable. Man, whoever captured that footage, man, did a really good job because it's terrifying just even recording that while things are falling down on your head.
Residential
you know what
areas
I mean?
were also heavily affected, with homes showing different degrees
kind of looked like Haiti back in the day,
depending
too.
on their construction and location. Some houses remained standing but developed cracks and damaged walls, while others suffered more substantial failures.
Dios mío! Esto sí es muy fuerte.
In neighborhoods close to the most severely affected areas, residents gathered outdoors rather than immediately returning inside because they feared that weakened roofs, walls, or upper sections could collapse if another strong tremor occurred. The earthquake's effect on infrastructure extended beyond buildings themselves. Roads and transportation routes were inspected for damage, while authorities remained concerned about landslides and falling rocks in mountainous areas.
Wow.
¿Por qué no vamos bajando?
I don't get how anybody could stay in a house when the building is shaking like that, man. It's freaking dangerous. Why would you want to stay in your own building? Get the hell out of there, man. Go on open ground so that things won't fall on your head, you know?
That are already difficult to reach. For emergency teams attempting to move equipment and rescue personnel into remote areas, even a partially blocked road can significantly slow the response.
See, you're outside. No, it could be dangerous as well too, but at least things are not going to be falling on your head like debris of concrete, right, or steel bars or glass. So, man, that's even watching that footage looks scary
Danger did not
too.
end when the main earthquake stopped. Authorities reported numerous aftershocks following the initial event, raising concerns about buildings that had all.
If you struggle with focus,
So that's
sound might change everything.
yeah, like I said, man, go outside. Don't stay indoors, man. It's very, very scary when you're inside. You're looking for death right there in the eyes.
Had
So.
been weakened by the first shock.
Ya, tranquilo. Mierda.
Tranquilo, relax, yeah.
Even a smaller subsequent earthquake can cause portions of damaged walls, ceilings, or facades to fall, particularly where the original shaking has already compromised the structural connections. This is why residents were being urged to stay away from visibly damaged buildings until professional inspections could determine whether they were safe to enter. The wide geographic reach of the earthquake made the structural assessment particularly challenging. The epicenter was in a relatively remote part of Chocó, but the earthquake was strongly felt in much larger urban centers, meaning that emergency authorities had to coordinate inspections and assistance across multiple departments rather than concentrating all resources around a single town.
Se cayó, hueputa. Hueputa se cayó.
See, that's the best idea is to, go outside in front, you know.
Reports of damaged homes, businesses, and other structures came from different parts of the region, while engineers and emergency personnel worked to establish which areas required the most urgent intervention.
Wow, look at that church right there. Just
how a powerful seismic event can affect a city.
the whole
even
church
when
is
the
like
epicenter is
flipping
hundreds of
side to
kilometers
side.
away. In Cali,
Unbelievable.
for example, the distance from the epicenter did not prevent substantial structural damage from occurring. The shaking was strong enough to affect homes and commercial buildings, while the collapse of some structures demonstrated the enormous forces that can be transferred through the ground during a major earthquake.
Yo pensé que era el carro. Dios mío.
Footage from the city provided a stark visual record of the destruction, with damaged buildings surrounded by concrete fragments, broken masonry, and dust. As emergency operations continued, engineers began focusing on the distinction between buildings that were completely destroyed, structures that could potentially be repaired, and buildings that appeared intact but required detailed inspection. This process is essential because earthquake damage is not always immediately visible. A building may retain its exterior appearance while suffering serious damage to internal supports, foundations, or load-bearing element. Authorities therefore faced the difficult task of examining large numbers of structures before allowing residents and businesses to return.
Wow.
The earthquake has left Western Colombia facing a major structural assessment in addition to the immediate rescue effort. Roads, public buildings, residential properties, commercial structures, and other infrastructure all require inspection, while damaged areas must be cleared and made safe.
All right, guys. So that was pretty much it. That man, that was brutal. And seeing buildings fall, topple on top of each other, and watching people run and scatter is quite frightening, actually. And no one wants to see that. People dying and buildings falling down, earthquakes and stuff like that. It happened a lot in L.A. Haiti. When I did a documentary on Haiti, exactly the same thing. It was the whole, their White House or their parliament went down to the rubbles. It was all down, toppled down. I did a documentary on that. I'm going to have to show it to you later on in one of my videos, so just scroll down. But it was pretty brutal watching people like that. So hearts and prayers to the family, and hopefully everybody could help out and gather around to help these people, because apparently there's going to be a lot of help financially and food-wise as well too. And so, I can't mention the looting at nighttime, when there's going to be a lot more looting and pillaging and all that crazy stuff too. So all the freaks come out at night. So especially when it comes to this, something tragic. But anyway, hearts and prayers to the family in Colombia, and hopefully they will stand strong and surpass this, and everybody band together and help them out. So, okay, guys, so only God will tell. So, hearts and prayers to them, and hopefully they will get over this and move forward onto life itself and start rebuilding Colombia again. 1,600 people, 1,600 buildings, 7.4 earthquake damages in Colombia. All right, guys, that's it for today. Bye for now. God bless, Godspeed, and see you in the next one.